First of all, I'm really thrilled to be able to have a chance to visit and talk about things that are important to me, and certainly governance is. So governance in deference to government is the rules of the game for how it is we create agreements. And so that's been a passion of mine, not just since it's kind of become popular in the last half a dozen years, but really throughout my career. Why is that? Part of that's because natural resources, environmental issues, have different resolutions at every social scale. So the group of people that get together and are going to have a different resolution to the same political issues because we as people are different and as polities are different. And that's true at the national level, it's true internationally as well. And so governance is how do we set up the rules so that we can do politics well? We have differences in opinions and sentiments about these things that we care about, from clean air to big trees. So somehow we have to balance those. That's what politics is about, arbitrating value differences, and governance is the way we set those rules up. I might take a minute to talk about why government is important. In the U.S., those people that have been in my classes know that I underscore that there are over 90,000 governments. There are all these special districts, school districts, and there are federal government, 567 federally recognized tribes. But the ones we think about, county government, city governments, states, the federal government in the U.S., other nation states. It turns out that when we do collaborative work in other sectors of the political economy, we hang those agreements and we depend on governments for holding those agreements over time. So what makes a market economy work? Institutional arrangements that we've reified in governments, and governments hold those agreements, things like property rights and contract law, monetary policy. And so even in the most benign ways, we depend on governments to do their work. And certainly in environmental and natural resources, we find over and over again that when we get done with the hard work of a community-based negotiation, that we turn that agreement over to a government. So you know that my faculty life has been one that has been a hybrid. It's been the definition of an academic who sees themselves in practice. I would say the contributions have been the contributions to meet the learning needs of public service professionals wherever they are. So that includes new people starting out, trying to get people excited about the potential of a public service career. It includes trying to help people understand what it is that practice takes in terms of competencies. And so, I've been one of the people that have focused on the curriculum that we have, revising the curriculum that we have, adding new courses, adding new degree programs to meet the learning needs of public service professionals. But it's not just degree-based kinds of work. At least half of my work has been in other kinds of learning ventures with mid-career professionals. And so we have developed, for instance, a collaborative governance graduate certificate, but that was predicated on a workshop that we developed on request from the federal executives of the natural resource agencies. They came and asked us, our folks need more competency in collaborative governance. Can you help us? And so Elaine Hallmark and Laurel Singer and I, working with federal exec partners, created a workshop, and that workshop became the basis for the certificate. And even before that, there were some, 30 years of practice on my part doing community-based natural resource management, helping create agreements, some heroic, like the 7th American Forest Congress, where we created a policy dialogue for 1,200 people on the floor of a hotel in Washington, D.C., at a time when there was not just conflict, but armed conflict and violence in the woods. And so really heroic work. And then similar kinds of things, co-managing the 2000 State of the Oregon Environment Report. Big things. All of them characterized by moving from a place within the academy where we have strong theory, and bringing in relationship to that the challenges that practitioners face. And so that kind of marriage between theory and practice has been at the center of my career, and all of the things that we hang on in terms of the things that I've done, are related to that. Now, there are some things that when I stop to reflect, I'm pretty amazed at. About 2/3 of the master's students that have gone on to be presidential management fellows from the Hatfield School over its existence have been students of mine. That's not just because of me, but it's partly because I've encouraged people to think about federal service as well as service in the region. It's partly because, I teach the National Policy Process Seminar, and so I know what that takes, and I can coach and guide the appropriate kinds of students to step up to take a whack at that, nationally competitive opportunity. I'm also, in retrospect, extremely proud of the work that I've done with doctoral students. I didn't come into this business thinking that I would be working primarily with doctoral students, and certainly when I migrated from Lewis and Clark to Portland State and helped revive the doctoral program, I didn't see that that was going to be a signature part. But I will tell you that 10 years ago, when I turned down the endowed university professorship at Michigan State, one of the parts of that calculus was the train of doctoral students that I was engaged with here at Portland State. But I'll tell you this, the contributions that I'm most proud of are the ones that come from working with a student that's, let's say, a marginal student, and they turn out in a class or two of mine to get really excited about the content and the work. They go on to perform well, perhaps not 4.0, but perform well, improve their competencies, and then go on to a life of public service. And one of the things that fills my heart up is when I see them in practice, I recognize the contributions that we have made. And I'm at a point in my career now where I'm trying to record that in writing, the ideas that we've been able to build together. This is a great question. After the last election, my kids asked me if my heart was broken, and I said no. The work that we do is the same work. It's different work. It's a reflection of the challenges that we have in the polity and the need to expand the way we see public service leadership. When I started, we were trying to get people excited about moving beyond the boundaries of their organization or their particular role in terms of public service leadership. We were trying to get them to take responsibility of organizations as a whole and their institutional qualities. What is it that your agency is known for? What is it that your organization wants to embed in terms of the values of the organization going forward? And what can you do, regardless of where you sit, to further those values and their institutionalization? During my tenure, that's where we started, and it wasn't very long after that that we realized that that wasn't sufficient, that we needed to get people to work among organizations, they needed to reach across sectors, they needed to understand what drove other sectors. So if they were working in a nonprofit organization, they needed to know what it was that they could ask of a state agency or a federal actor or a tribal entity. And that meant that we spent a lot of time not only helping people understand what those things are, but understand how it is to work with people who are different in terms of the institutional roles that they fit. That work is still the same, but the job is even larger. We need to move between sectors. We need to move across the landscape. We need to understand that it's not sufficient for us just to create vital organizations or sectors within the political economy, but we need to measure our success in terms of residual to the community and society as a whole. We're talking about this, Doug Morgan, Marcus Engel, and I are in the final stages of a book on public service leadership, and we're talking about this as polity leadership. And so if you look at our models now, you'll see that the model that I share with students is one that has not only 4 sectors, private sector and public sector, special districts and nonprofits, but there's a circle around it that's described as civil society. And in my mind, the challenge that we go forward with is taking responsibility for the health and well-being of civil society in the work that we do every day, wherever that work is as a whole. And that means that we need to improve our conciliatory practices and our everyday competencies in collaboration. We just need to learn more about how we work with people who are different than us, who see the world differently than us, and we need to be able to embrace those differences as a strength in a pluralistic society. The question is always which field, and for people that work with me, they know that I'm not camped out. I've been leading the environmental and natural resource programs here for a long time. I'm thrilled that Jennifer Allen has joined me and is taking over that mantle. But the fact is that I've worked across the board. I'm part of the team that's a faculty that lead on the local government specialization. I've contributed early on in the global specialization. I've made contributions in health and certainly in nonprofits. Early on in my career, I was tapped to be one of the core nonprofit folks because I understood it and worked in nonprofits. And as we added faculty, I could step away from that. And obviously have been a core contributor to the Masters in Public Policy. The point is that there's not just one kind of student that I work with, and that means that the advice is going to be broader. And it's going to sound a lot like other things that I've said. So one thing is that we know that people that are attracted to public service, regardless of whether it's in nonprofits or special districts or in governments, they're motivated by different things. They're motivating by serving others. And we can actually measure this public service motivation. We want people in their heart of hearts to not only find a place that's reaffirming of that motivation, but one that expands that motivation. People who choose public service careers become the targets for an awful lot of dislike, dismay, and distrust. That doesn't diminish the work that we do. Quite often we do that work in the shadows. And so if this is a career choice for you, or profession that you've selected because you want to see your name on a billboard, choose a different career. It's the marginal case that we are able to bring into a network of service provision. It's making sure that we do everyday work very, very well. So let's say that we're a planner and we're working on identifying important green space for ecological health of watersheds. We have to do that work technically very well, but then we also have to do that work politically really well. We need to make sure that we understand that we're not the only ones that have an interest in that particular piece of geography. And so that we're going to have to be open to the possibility that our technical work is going to be disputed, not because of its fact base, but because people are going to see those facts differently and want different outcomes associated with the policy issues that surround them. So those are some things that I would say to new students. I would say that while it's true that the world is moving faster, that it's a globalized world, and that people are looking for ways to root locally, it means you're going to have to learn to solve problems in a wicked problem environment. And we've been working on ways to help people develop competencies to do that. I would also remind new students that part of our job as public service leaders is to create conditions in which others can follow. And the things that people need to follow actually are things that are pretty ordinary. They need to have some security. They need to know what's changing and what's not. They need to know where to focus their energy. They need a sense of direction. These are things that we know out of the research literature that followers need. And so even as new students try to figure out how to get their feet on the ground in their world, we need to practice those kinds of things in ways that those around us can be more successful. So the burdens that new students are going to take on are going to be larger, not smaller. And so we need to embrace the fire, the passion that people bring in. This work has been privileged work. There are better places to get a bigger paycheck. There are better places to get a tidy job, a job that starts at 9 and ends at 5. But the work that we've been engaged in here, that I've been privileged to be a part of, is the kind of work that has the potential to change individuals, change organizations and institutions, change communities and indeed society.